When my father passed away, he left me a single piece of land on the outskirts of our small town. A few acres of dry soil with wild grass and broken fences. To most people it was worthless, but to me it was everything. My father had worked that land his entire life. It was where he taught me how to plant seeds, how to build with my own hands, and how to never give up. When I married Adam, I thought his family would respect that legacy. I was wrong. Adam's mother, Margaret, was a woman of control, elegant in appearance but sharp as a blade in words. From the moment I became her daughter-in-law, she made it clear that I would never truly belong. "Land doesn't suit women like you, dear," she said once with that sugar-coated voice. "Leave the business and property decisions to those who understand them." At the time, I laughed it off, thinking it was just her way of showing superiority. But her words had weight, ones that would come back to crush me. After a year of marriage, Adam started struggling with debts. His small construction firm had lost clients, and we were on the verge of bankruptcy. I offered to sell my jewelry or find extra work, but Margaret had a different idea. She whispered it to Adam first, not to me. "Sell that barren land your wife clings to. It's useless anyway. We can clear the debts and start anew." When Adam brought it up to me one evening, I felt my heart sink. "No," I said immediately. "That land is my father's memory." He looked away, ashamed. "It's just land, Clara. We need money. Mom thinks it's the best choice." I argued, begged, even cried. But within a week, the paperwork was already being prepared without my consent. Margaret had convinced Adam to put it in his name, claiming it was for family unity. I trusted my husband enough to believe it was temporary. I was wrong again. 2 months later, I found out Margaret had sold the land for a shockingly low price, barely a fraction of its worth. When I confronted her, she didn't even flinch. "Oh dear," she smiled, sipping her tea. "I only did what you couldn't. You'll thank me someday." I stood frozen. My hand shook as I whispered, "You sold my father's land?" Her tone turned cold. "Correction, my dear, it was my son's land, and I made sure it didn't go to waste." That night I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the old photo of my father on the land he loved. I felt betrayed, not just by my mother-in-law, but by my husband too. He didn't even defend me. He said, "What's done is done, Clara, move on." But something inside me refused to move on. Something deeper than anger, it was intuition. I couldn't shake the feeling that my father had left something more behind on that land. Something important. A week later, while sorting through my father's old journals, I found a note tucked between the pages. "If anyone ever digs beneath the southern oak tree, they'll find what truly belongs to our family." My breath caught. The southern oak, our favorite spot. A huge tree that stood tall even when the rest of the land was dry and barren. My father always said it was the heart of the soil. I hadn't thought about it in years. But now every word of his note burned in my mind. The next morning before sunrise, I drove to the land, now fenced off by the new owner. I stood by the gate, heart pounding, eyes locked on that same oak tree swaying in the distance. Whatever my father had hidden there, I was going to find it. The morning I returned to the land, a mist hung over the fields, soft and silver. It felt like stepping into a memory. The gate creaked open just enough for me to slip inside. I shouldn't have been there. The paper said the land now belonged to someone else, but my heart didn't care about papers or ownership. It cared about truth. The oak tree stood at the far end of the property, its branches spread wide like arms welcoming me home. My father used to say, "If you ever feel lost, Clara, find your way back to this tree." I never understood what he meant until now. I dropped to my knees beside the thick roots and started to dig with my bare hands. The soil was cold, damp, stubborn. I dug for what felt like hours, my nails breaking, my palms burning. Each handful of dirt felt like tearing through the lies that had buried my father's legacy. Just when I thought it was pointless, my fingers hit something hard. Metal. My pulse quickened. I cleared more dirt until a small rusted box emerged. I lifted it carefully. It was heavy, locked with a corroded clasp. For a moment I just stared at it, afraid to open it. What could my father have hidden all these years? Back in my car, I used a wrench from the trunk to break the lock. The lid creaked open, revealing a bundle of old papers wrapped in a faded blue cloth. Inside were land deeds, maps, and a letter addressed to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. My father's familiar handwriting dancing across the yellowed page. My dearest Clara, if you are reading this, it means you've come back to the land. Beneath this soil lies not only our family's roots, but a secret that must never fall into the wrong hands. The land may seem small, but beneath it runs a natural spring of pure water, one that could bring life to the entire region. Protect it, my child. It belongs to you, and to those who cherish the earth, not to those who see it only as profit. My eyes filled with tears. A natural spring. That explained why the soil always felt moist even in droughts. My father had discovered something extraordinary and had kept it hidden, afraid that greedy people would exploit it. I clutched the papers to my chest, realizing what this meant. Margaret had sold not just my inheritance, but something of far greater value. Something that could change lives. Just as I stepped out of the car, I heard a voice behind me. Well. Sneaking around, are we? I froze. Margaret stood there, her lips curved into a smirk. She had followed me. What are you doing here? I demanded, trying to hide the box behind me. Oh, don't play innocent, Clara, she said, stepping closer. I saw your car parked by the fence. What did you find? Something your dear father left behind? Her eyes gleamed with greed. She reached for the box, but I pulled it away. This isn't yours, I shouted. Margaret's expression hardened. You silly girl. That land belongs to the man I sold it to. Whatever is in that box is his property now. Wrong, I said, clutching it tighter. This isn't about money. My father discovered something precious here. Something pure. Her smirk faltered. What are you talking about? I hesitated, realizing I'd said too much. She narrowed her eyes, reading my silence. You found something, didn't you? Well, it doesn't matter. I'll find out soon enough. That land is already being prepared for development. Construction begins next week. Her words hit me like thunder. Development. They were going to destroy the land and the underground spring with it. When she drove away, I stood there shaking, torn between fear and determination. The papers in my hands were my only weapon, my only proof. I couldn't let my father's legacy be buried again, this time under concrete. That night I barely slept. I spent hours studying the old maps and deeds. They clearly showed the underground water lines, the natural spring, and my father's name as the rightful owner. But the signature on the recent sale documents, the ones Margaret had used, looked different. A thought crept into my mind like a spark of hope. What if the sale wasn't legal? If I could prove that my signature had been forged, I could reclaim the land. But I needed help, and I knew exactly where to start. I picked up my phone and called the only person who ever believed in me as much as my father did. Mr. Harris, my father's old lawyer. Clara? He said, surprised to hear from me. Mr. Harris, I whispered, my voice shaking. I found something on my father's land. Something big. And I think my mother-in-law forged my signature. There was a long pause on the other end. Then his calm, steady voice replied, Meet me tomorrow, Clara. Bring everything you found. It's time the truth came to light. As I ended the call, I looked out the window toward the horizon where my father's land lay, now a battlefield between greed and legacy. But one thing was certain. I was done being silent. The next morning I arrived at Mr. Harris's office, clutching the rusted box like a lifeline. The air outside was crisp, but my hands were sweating. Every step toward that door felt heavier than the last. Inside, the old lawyer greeted me with the same warm smile I remembered from my childhood. His hair was thinner now, his hands a little slower, but his eyes sharp as ever. Clara, he said softly, motioning me to sit. Your father spoke about you often. He'd be proud that you came to me. I handed him the old deeds and my father's letter. He unfolded the papers carefully, his brows furrowing as he examined them. This handwriting, unmistakably your father's. And these land documents, yes, they were registered years ago under his name, then transferred to yours, but... He trailed off, opening another folder I had brought, the ones Margaret used to sell the land. He looked from one document to the other, then up at me. Clara, this isn't just unethical. It's criminal. The signature on the sale deed isn't yours, it's a forgery. And not even a good one. My heart thudded in my chest. You mean, I can get the land back? He nodded slowly. If we act quickly, we'll need to file a legal objection. and request an immediate halt on any development work until we verify ownership. But you should prepare yourself. Your mother-in-law won't take this quietly." I smiled bitterly. She never does. By noon, the paperwork was ready. Mr. Harris submitted an injunction to the court requesting a freeze on all construction. I felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. But as fate would have it, hope rarely comes alone. It brings storms with it. That evening, as I returned home, Adam was waiting at the door, his face tight with anger. "What did you do?" he demanded before I could even step inside. "Mom just called." "You're trying to sue her now?" I froze. "Adam, she forged my signature. That land is rightfully mine, and my father's legacy is at stake. There's more beneath it than you know." He scoffed, running his hands through his hair. "You're imagining things again, Clara. Always these stories about your father's secrets. Mom sold the land to help us. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "She stole from me. From our family. She sold something she had no right to." He turned away. "You're overreacting. I'm tired of living in your father's shadow." Those words cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't just about the land anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and the invisible war that had been tearing my marriage apart since the day his mother entered our lives. That night, I packed a small bag and left. I couldn't stay with someone who couldn't see the truth. As I drove through the quiet streets, I glanced at the stars and whispered, "Dad, guide me, please." The next day, Mr. Harris called. "Clara, you need to come to the site immediately. The judge approved our injunction, but someone's already there trying to start work despite the order." My stomach twisted. When I arrived at the land, my fears came true. Bulldozers stood by the oak tree, engines rumbling. Workers were arguing with a police officer waving the court papers. And standing in the middle of it all, Margaret. She looked furious when she saw me. "You think a few papers will stop progress?" she snapped. "That land is gone, Clara. It's not yours anymore." I held up the letter my father wrote. "Then explain this. My father discovered a spring beneath this soil, a natural source that could bring life to this entire region. And you wanted to bury it under cement." For the first time, her confident mask faltered. "A spring?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "Yes," I said. "And it's still there. You sold land without knowing its worth. You betrayed your own family." The police officer stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said to Margaret, "until the investigation is complete, this land is sealed. No one touches it." As they escorted the workers away, Margaret glared at me. "You think you've won, don't you? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Maybe I didn't. But as I stood beneath that ancient oak tree once more, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of her. I wasn't the quiet daughter-in-law she could silence. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone digging, Clara. Some things are better left buried." My blood ran cold. Someone else knew about the spring. Someone who didn't want me to uncover the truth. And in that moment, I realized the real battle hadn't even begun yet. That anonymous message haunted me all night. Some things are better left buried. I must have read it 100 times, each word echoing in my mind like a warning. Who sent it, Margaret? Or someone else involved in the sale? Every instinct in me screamed that I was being watched. The next morning, I met Mr. Harris again. He looked troubled as I showed him the message. "Clara," he said gravely, "this isn't just about a piece of land anymore. If what your father discovered is real, there could be people willing to do anything to get it." I frowned. "You think someone knew about the spring before we did?" He sighed. "Possibly. Underground water rights are a powerful thing. Companies would pay millions to own a land with a natural spring. If Margaret sold it to the wrong person, we might be facing more than just a legal dispute." His words made my stomach twist. The truth was bigger than I imagined. My father's secret wasn't just a family matter. It was a treasure hidden in plain sight. That evening, I drove to the land again, determined to see the spring with my own eyes. The police tape still hung loosely around the property, fluttering in the wind. The oak tree stood silent, like it was guarding its secret. I carried a small shovel and a flashlight, following the map my father had drawn decades ago. After digging for hours near the tree's roots, I hit something unexpected: solid rock. But beneath it, I could hear faint dripping sounds. I cleared more soil until a narrow crevice appeared, releasing a cool rush of air. When I shone my light inside, I gasped. There it was, a hidden underground cave, glistening with crystal-clear water trickling through stone channels. My father hadn't lied. It was breathtaking. I knelt, touching the edge of the opening, tears streaming down my face. "You did it, Dad," I whispered. "You really did." Suddenly, the sound of gravel crunching behind me made me freeze. I turned. A man stood there, tall, in a dark coat, face partially shadowed. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Who are you?" I demanded, clutching the shovel tighter. "Let's just say, a business associate of your mother-in-law," he replied with a smirk. "You've made quite a mess, Clara. The buyer isn't happy about the injunction. He paid a lot of money for this land, and he doesn't like delays. So he sent you to threaten me." He took a slow step closer. "No, I'm just here to make you an offer. You hand over those documents, sign a release, and walk away. You'll be paid handsomely. Enough to start over." My heart pounded. This land isn't for sale. It never was. My father left it to me for the people, not for greed. His eyes hardened. Wrong answer. He reached into his jacket pocket, and I instinctively stumbled back, ready to run. But before he could move further, bright headlights flooded the field. "Police!" shouted a voice. The man cursed under his breath and vanished into the shadows before the officers reached me. Mr. Harris rushed out of one of the cars, panting. "Clara, are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I said, shaking. Someone was here. He wanted the documents. He nodded grimly. "We suspected as much. The buyer behind the sale is part of a major water corporation. They've been buying rural land across the county. Your mother-in-law may not have known what she was selling, but they did." I stared at him in disbelief. "So she was manipulated too?" He hesitated, then nodded. "In a way, yes. But greed blinded her. They offered her money and she took it." The realization hit me like a wave of sadness. For all her cruelty, Margaret might have been just another pawn in their game. Over the next few days, the news spread. The court accepted our evidence of forgery, and the investigation expanded to include fraudulent corporate activities. Margaret was summoned for questioning. When she came to see me one last time, she looked nothing like the woman who once held her head high. Her eyes were tired, her voice fragile. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said quietly. "They promised me it was just business. I didn't know about your father's spring." I stared at her, torn between anger and pity. "You sold what you didn't understand, Margaret. But now the truth is out." She lowered her gaze. "I thought I was helping Adam. I thought I was saving our family. You destroyed it instead," I whispered. She left without another word. That night, I sat alone beneath the oak tree, listening to the faint murmur of water below. The land felt alive again, like my father's spirit was there beside me, whispering that I had done the right thing. But deep down, I knew the fight wasn't over. The company wouldn't give up easily, and neither would I. The following weeks were a storm of courtroom hearings, interviews, and long nights filled with doubt. My life had turned into a whirlwind of legal battles and whispered threats. Yet through it all, I kept holding on to one thing: my father's voice in my heart. The truth will always find its way back to the surface. Clara. The day of the final court hearing arrived with gray clouds looming over the city, as if the sky itself was waiting for justice. Mr. Harris walked beside me, his old briefcase in hand, his calm presence giving me strength. Across the courtroom, Margaret sat quietly beside Adam. Her once proud face was pale, eyes downcast, the arrogance long gone. I could feel her shame from across the room. The company's lawyers tried everything, discrediting my evidence, questioning my memory, twisting every fact. But when Mr. Harris presented the forgery analysis, the room went silent. Side by side on the big screen, my real signature and the forged one glared like truth versus deceit. "This," he said firmly, "is a calculated act of fraud. Mrs. Clara's ownership was unlawfully taken from her through deceit and manipulation." The judge studied the documents for a long moment before finally speaking. "It's clear that the sale was invalid. The land shall be returned to its rightful owner, Mrs. Clara Reynolds." Tears filled my eyes. After months of pain, betrayal, and fear, I had won. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Margaret began to cry quietly while Adam sat motionless, unable to look at me. After the verdict, the authorities launched a full investigation into the corporation that bought the land. It turned out the company had been using similar schemes to acquire other properties rich in natural resources. My case became the turning point that exposed their crimes. When the officers sealed their office and seized their records, I felt something inside me heal, a wound that had bled for far too long. A few days later, Margaret showed up at my door. She looked smaller somehow, wrapped in a plain coat, her eyes soft but weary. "Clara," she said, her voice trembling. "I came to apologize." For a moment, I said nothing. Then she stepped closer. I was blinded by greed and by pride. I thought I was protecting Adam, but I only hurt everyone. "I can't undo what I did, but I hope someday you can forgive me." I looked at her for a long time, remembering every cruel word, every betrayal. Yet in her face I saw something I hadn't before: sincerity. My father always taught me that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom. "I forgive you," I said quietly, "but never forget, some things money can't buy, and trust is one of them." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered before leaving. Months passed. I restored the land just as my father had dreamed. With Mr. Harris's help and support from local volunteers, we turned it into a community water project. The underground spring was channeled to provide fresh water to nearby villages that had struggled with drought for years. Every morning, I would visit the oak tree, the heart of it all. I would close my eyes, listening to the soft rush of water beneath, and feel my father's presence surrounding me like sunlight. The once barren land now bloomed with wildflowers, and children came to play near the stream that flowed from the spring. One afternoon, as I stood there watching them laugh, Adam approached me. He looked different, humbled, uncertain. "Clara," he said quietly, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to say I'm sorry. I let my mother control me, and I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." I smiled faintly. "It's not too late to change, Adam. Just don't forget what this land cost us. My father's gift wasn't about wealth, it was about purpose." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I understand now." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the fields, I whispered to the wind, "We did it. Dad, your legacy lives." The oak tree swayed gently as if nodding in approval, and in that moment I knew the land wasn't just soil. It was memory, justice, and hope, all intertwined beneath the roots.